I'm here to talk about DRMM, so let's get started. Here we can see my dashboard where we can manage and monitor all of our endpoints. I can see my antivirus status, third-party software management status, Windows patch status, my backups, my ransomware status, list my devices from Rocket Cyber, as well as make sure things are active within EDR. To deploy DRMM, we need to create a site. And within that site, we can then start adding some variables and settings, security levels, any specific email recipients may be responsible for this organization. Add the group to other site groups we may have, any additional subnets that we may want to scan for the purposes of LAN deploy and network monitoring, which I'll get to. And once the site's created, we can then add devices. So from here, for my Windows OS, Mac OS, Linux, any network devices we want to add into the system, monitor if they're SNMP enabled. Any ESXi hosts we want to monitor as well. We have the XE, the agent link. We can email across if we need somebody to get a DRMM agent installed on the network, so we can then therefore do a network discovery and potentially LAN deploy from the agent. And we have an installation command that we can use with third parties to push out. Once installed, as we can see, DRMM will audit, monitor, help us manage, support and report on those devices. Once we've installed the agent, it's going to do its first audit. And part of the automation we can build in is deploying components or scripts via the agent. So once the agent's deployed, we can then go about setting up our jobs and our policies to manage those devices. Part of the automation means that when the device does its first initial audit, we can have some tasks set up, preliminary tasks to get that device set up, onboarded. Once the agent's deployed to an endpoint, it will do its initial audit. And for purposes of onboarding, here we can automate, based off that initial audit, an initial onboarding job, setup tasks, where we can use a big proportion of what is DRMM via the components and job scheduler. Here you can see I've got an example of a global new Windows desktop setup. Just an example realistically with some small sysadmin tasks I might want to perform on that machine manually, but I don't have to now. I've installed Google Chrome, uninstalled Microsoft Store apps, toggled Windows News and Interest off, get set default browser, adjusted the power settings. There's a lot more we can do via the components that we can get from the COM store. Within the COM store, we've got applications, installers essentially, further scripts, disk cleanup, install admins, remove guest admins, whatever it might be, and additional monitoring to go alongside the native baseline health monitoring that we'll be doing within here. You can add those components from the COM store, the DRMM COM store, and you can create your own as well. Here, I might want to build out my own application installer, add an XE MSI with a simple batch command, PowerShell, Bash, Shell, vscript. I can create my own monitor, my own script. I can base them off the existing ones that come via DRMM. We can add in site variables here that we can set at the site settings, at the component level, for prompts, for deployment, as well as just with jobs. We might want to utilize these monitors via monitoring policies. So here, I've come through to the policy section. I want to set up some of that baseline health monitoring, CPU, RAM, disk usage, things like that. If we can provide a sort of global level of standardization across the board, we can mitigate risk on these devices and keep on top of security. Within the monitoring policy section, we have a long list of best practice policies ready to go out of the box. There's a lot of default network SNMP monitoring policies for commonly used network appliances, backup monitoring as well as Windows OS, Mac OS monitoring, that type of thing. We can just simply get started straight away. I've got a Windows desktop monitor here. If we scroll through, I can see this has been set at global level. So all of my sites and organizations within will inherit this policy. We've got CPU, disk usage, event log, service, monitors. If they're not all necessary, if they're causing some noise, or we want to deal with how we receive this information differently, we can remove or edit any of the policies. For the disk usage policy, we might want to adjust the threshold by which we're creating alerts. Perhaps instead of 95% on this one, it should be 85%. At the same time, I might want to disable this policy for a specific device if the baseline standardization monitoring doesn't suit the elements, the variables within that specific device. Within every monitoring policy option, we've got the option to run another one of our components from the COM store or any of our other pre-built imported scripts that we might have. In this one, we've got an example disk cleanup tools going to run when the disk usage gets to 85%. If I click on my component library, I can maybe pull something through like data size, get largest files, folders on disk, some sort of first line troubleshooting step or auto remediation included in the monitoring. With any policy, and a lot of the jobs we set up in here, we have our targets. This one's set, again, a global level with a filter to target all Windows desktops. So now, along with the onboarding job, the initial audit onboarding job that just automatically pushes out to those correct devices, those devices will now also inherit all of my configuration here. We can get more granular and set site-specific policies if we need to. When it comes to third-party patching, software management, and Microsoft updates, we have 3 policies to assist, including a Windows Update policy to adjust and set the configuration of the Windows Update agent on the Windows OS devices. Here you can see we've got a global scope or site scope again, and the individual options that come with the agent. We can configure WSUS if it's in the environment already, so we can work alongside what's there, or we can take over with DRMM. Again, with this policy, we'll set our targets to the devices that need this specific configuration. Once that's set, we can then use a DRMM patch management policy to audit or actually take over installing those updates on a schedule. In this example, the recurrence is weekly, on Wednesdays and Fridays for 4 hours. Chosen not to power down the machine, but display a restart reminder to users every 2 hours that will persist if they keep canceling it after 5 times. And that restart reminder will work hand in hand with the branding options as well, so you'll be able to have your logos on there. Further down, we've got our specific approval settings to make sure we're worrying and auditing and reporting on the actual patches we care about. I've got release date here for older than 7 days, so we're not the initial guinea pigs for Microsoft updates here. We can wait till they've had community exception. Having said that, we do audit the Windows Update agent and go by its preferences. If we have quality feature updates that have been deferred for 2 weeks or more, then we will abide by those rules first anyway. And here I've chosen to exclude previews, drivers, security essentials, anything that may be problematic or cloud my reporting for things I don't care about when pushing out via this type of third-party software for Windows updates specifically. We'll get a full list of all the KBs that are available, so we can get even more granular with approval settings, set our targets, and we can deploy that so we can start looking after our Windows updates. Software management has a similar theme. We can choose to look after patches for existing software on a machine, either immediately on detection or via a schedule, similar to the patch management schedule. And then we can choose to leave unmanaged, manually approve those patches, auto-approve patches, and install if not present. With the advanced software management policy, we get the option to uninstall and remove as well for over 200 applications in our native catalog. When it comes to managing a device, we can drill right down to the device level, see all the details of the audit information we have, any of the policies and patch management we've applied, alerts from the monitoring, details on the software management compliance, and we can get to our remote takeover tools. Here we have Web Remote, which will use HTML5, allow me just to execute this and launch a connection in the browser. We can launch PowerShell from here without interrupting the user. We could chat to the user first. We go directly on and do a screen share with the user. All right, so I didn't have to log in. So that's taking me straight on with the user. They have multiple monitors. I'll get options to switch the monitors over on the right-hand side. If I was accessing this device, if I was logged into DRMM on an iPad or a tablet or something like that, I might need an on-screen keyboard to assist me in managing this device right now. We've got some quick launch tools to make it easier as we navigate around. We can pull up the task manager, the services, registry editor, anything like that nice and quickly. And we've got some useful preferences down the right-hand side. Perhaps if we just want a viewing session and we don't want to interrupt the user briefly, we can block the remote input so we're not having to fight over the mouse and keyboard. I can blank the desktop as I have done here. Lock after disconnect in case the user's on lunch. We don't want to leave their device unattended and open to anybody. And we can clear the clipboard on close as well in case we've been copying and pasting anything across that we don't want the end user to be able to get their hands on. So DRMM is set up in a 3-tier hierarchy. We have the global level, the sites level, and the device level. We can configure our policies and our jobs to work at global level. That will help us have a standardization across our organization's sort of baseline minimum level of quality we're trying to achieve, checking for the health of the devices and the security aspects, as well as making sure the backup's running in the AV and the rest of it. We can exclude or disable at global level for bespoke setups, organizations or sites that aren't getting the full support or require that level of monitoring. And then we have the device level where we can also add bespoke monitors if we're troubleshooting a device, trying to support a device. We can see the activity and the change log and the history of that device all within the device level. Now, when we say we set things up at global level, we'll use filters and groups to target the devices at the global level. If we use a filter, as you can see here, I've got a list of default filters. They could be related to the operating system, types of devices, could be based on applications. We can create custom filters for all sorts as well. We can use tagging to get quite clever with inheritance at a global scale. So as we add more devices, it's just easier and easier to scale and apply our default baseline standardization settings. Groups are a way where we can add devices to specific groups, knowing that that group won't change, those devices won't fall in or out dynamically, like the filters, where it's based on the criteria that makes the filter. But yeah, with device groups, we may use those for specific scheduling of patch management policies, as an example, or other ways to make sure we capture certain devices with certain jobs that we want to set up. Once we have our sites set up, devices within the sites, and some filters and groups, we can start about setting our policies and our jobs. From here, we can now set up some automation as well as our policies. But starting at automation, we'll want to create some jobs that can run for onboarding and for recurring purposes going forward. If I click on my recurring policies here, we've got disk cleanup that might run weekly, Mac OS patching that's going to run one of the components we have to assist in adding the updates for Mac. Initial audit jobs here can run a list of scripts or components that we have on initial audit. When we receive the first audit back from a newly onboarded device and it meets the target requirement, that will automatically fire off this job on that device and it can run through installing the required software, removing software, executing those scripts that we have. A big part of the automation is the Datto.com store, where we can find provided scripts, monitoring scripts, application installer scripts, various other scripts for all sorts of sysadmin type jobs. If the component that's presented looks useful, we add it to our own components library. And from here, we can potentially check the script, copy the script out to make our own version if we want to use it to write to UDFs, part of that tagging. We can see how the script's laid out here, and we can see how we can make our own version of scripts as well. If I was to copy this type of script, I'd get the option to create my own application monitoring type of script. We've got the options here for batch, bash, PowerShell, shell, Unix, VB script we could add in. Technically anything that will run on the machine once it's deployed anyway. And lower down, we might have some specific variables for that script that we want to reference. We can set the component script as well to reference site settings, another way to make it easier to automate onboarding again, filtering or inheriting specific licenses for certain applications, whatever it might be. And we can also provide post conditions and good output for the scripts that we run. Those components as well will be part of our monitoring policies. If I jump into my standard monitoring policy here, click Add Monitoring, I can choose the antivirus status monitor, CPU, disk usage, event log. We've got the variables there to tweak those to trigger alerts based on the settings we require. If I click on component, we can add in any of those component monitors from the COM store, any we've built ourselves as well. And then we can trigger auto responses based off of those components. For the antivirus and EDR of K365, Datto DRMM will use its endpoint security policy to simplify deployment of the EDR and AV agent. All we need to do again is set a policy here with scope global or site, and we can then choose and enable the EDR agent here. Based on the settings that we'll see in the EDR platform, we'll have our configuration for AV, any suppression alerts, but the rest should be fairly automated with regards to letting that go. In this case, I've set up a group to target, specifically to track for this particular organization. So now, on top of that, if I go back to my K365 dashboard, I can start to track and make sure the EDR has been deployed correctly through here, that the ransomware monitoring has been activated on those devices, and I can make sure the antivirus starts running on those machines, whether it's running, whether it's detected at all, whether it's up to date. So the Rocket Cyber Agent script here installs the Rocket Cyber Agent, and it can be configured to write the device page URL to a UDF. So now for our Rocket Cyber devices, we've got a full list and the ability to navigate straight through to Rocket Cyber. Beyond supporting the device, we then need to be able to report on our activity, as well as report back to perhaps our clients, our organizations, management, on what we've been doing with the RMM solution in the first place. If I drill down to analytics, I've got an activity log of everything that's been done within the system, similar to the device level activity log section. This shows every action taken by a technician on the device, as well as any software management policies here. Any other automations we've got set up to run on the machine will be listed in the activity log. And then we have our reporting engine, where we can aggregate across all of the sites or create individual reports per site and target specific devices. Here we have our pre-built detailed computer audit, device activity, health summary, executive summary reports that can be set up to go directly to clients or any individuals concerned about a specific site that you may have in here. And we can also export any of the data that we have to CSV. Simply pick the reports we want. The types of devices we expect to be reporting on, simply all devices, potentially. And then we can set a schedule for when we want these reports to run. So I could just take a report immediately now. I could set this up to run monthly and be delivered directly to those preferred email recipients, or we can just receive them ourselves and work with them. If we did want to schedule a job to run, we can add any of those components we have into the system here. We add the targets we want to deploy to. So in this case, using operating system filters helps from a generic standard point of view, but I might have specific filters or groups that we need to push this job to fairly regularly. In this case, I'll just add Win 10 devices. And then we'll set a schedule to perform this similar to the other scheduling we've seen. Weekly, monthly day of the week, or on that initial audit. We could set a duration to stop attempting to run the job if it hasn't run when it's supposed to. There's an expiration that we can add in as well. So if we want a cover all, we don't know if devices are online at the moment, then we could set this job to only expire after perhaps a day, give those devices a chance to come on in the morning. We can add in any notifications we require about this job. And we can also set this to run as the logged in user. On top of the intuitive controls we have throughout the system, there is a Show Me How section with video guides and walkthroughs of all the aspects here. So if I wanted to set up a new site, add a user, create a dashboard, whatever it might be, the system can walk me through with a click through. We can do the direct download, shareable link, installation script, network discovery, Active Directory, or I can exit the tutorial at this point. But if I was to go through with it, it will keep telling me what to do. Start navigating to the sites list. That's popped that out for me. Click on all sites. Beyond the Walk Me, we also have videos and knowledge base articles in the KB area, documentation area.